Hello, and thank you for joining today's technical sales training session over Dell EMC Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct Ready Nodes. This session today will cover the technical aspects of the Spaces Direct Ready Node portfolio. Sales positioning is covered in its own session. This session will be more technical in overview and review. So if we think just over a year ago, Microsoft began including Storage Spaces Direct within Microsoft's Windows Server 2016 data center. And they've been pushing hard to compete in this fast-growing market. Now, our hyper-converged, linearly scaling solution around our ready nodes for Spaces Direct is optimally configured with the proper amount of CPU, memory, network controllers, and storage, whether flash or spinning disk. And we give customers the confidence and convenience of pre-configured nodes, leveraging certified components that are tested and validated. And these configurations are designed just for Storage Spaces Direct under Microsoft's WSSD program, that Windows Server software-defined program that Microsoft set up and that Dell is leveraging. And to that, we add a superb customer support experience delivered by Dell EMC as the single point of contact. This is multi-node and cluster-aware support, the industry's first to market, beyond just traditional regular single-server OEM support. Multi-node and cluster-aware support. And if we look at the market, software-defined storage, or SDS, is a huge market. Our ready node for Spaces Direct turns the server's local attached storage into SDS, software-defined storage, which is also referred to as server SAN. Now, Wikibon has predicted that the server SAN market will experience a 28% growth rate over the next decade, growing to around $48 billion in revenue. And our solution with this disruptive technology leads to higher margins. The evaluator group predicts that Storage Spaces Direct could drive down the price points for hyper-converged products because it eliminates hypervisor cost and traditional expensive SAN storage costs. So the opportunity is huge. But from a customer challenges perspective, we must understand that we provide confidence. Customers have problems around designing and configuring new infrastructure. And specifically with Storage Spaces Direct, this becomes very complex. Our Dell EMC Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct Ready Nodes are pre-configured with certified components that are tested and certified by Dell EMC and Microsoft under that WSSD program to take the guesswork out of building Storage Spaces Direct clusters. Your customers will have the confidence to extend virtualization of storage with a tightly integrated solution that's based off of trusted and proven Dell EMC powered servers with built-in high availability features. And we continue to provide confidence in that it takes a long time to design, configure, test, and validate hardware for Spaces Direct. Each of our ready nodes includes just the right amount of CPU, memory, network control, hard disk drives, solid state drives that are best suited to support Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct. These solutions are incredibly easy to order, and it makes adoption very convenient. Dell provides the customer the support guide and the ordering guidance to take days or even weeks out of getting this infrastructure up and running. And once they are deployed, administrative work is reduced by fewer interfaces, fewer steps to complete tasks, and a reduced need for specialized knowledge. And we also address customer support. With these virtualized infrastructures, in many instances it's hard to locate the source of a problem, making it hard to know who to call for help. Customers will benefit from the simplicity of a solution that's supported globally by a single vendor, Dell EMC, providing a streamlined, collaborative support from the very first call. Again, multi-node, cluster aware. So if we step back and think about what Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct is, well, it's simply an activated portion within Windows Server 2016 Data Center Edition. It's really simple to begin. You literally just click a checkbox during the install of the OS, and that activates Spaces Direct. It provides software-defined storage in addition to the traditional virtualization technologies of software-defined compute and memory. But the true value of Spaces Direct versus 2012 architectures and the old version of Spaces is that it's a hyper-converged node. A hyper-converged node in a cluster which provides many SAN-like features of redundancy. You have the value of fault tolerance, great performance, resource efficiency, manageability, and scalability. The Spaces Direct cluster presents a pool of storage via virtual disks as shared volumes of available data up to the Hyper-V virtual machines. And this cluster can scale from as small as 2 nodes up to 16, and with data capacity of up to 100 terabytes per node and 1 petabyte per cluster. Now, there are a number of white papers and light reading available for you that goes into more details around Spaces Direct, but that's a quick overview about what Spaces Direct brings. Now, for Spaces Direct, you can start with only 2 nodes. However, seeing that you only have 2 hosts, you cannot run a 3-way mirror, and you need a witness for the mirror, either a separate file share or a cloud witness if you're just running 2 nodes. Now, that cluster witness will act as a quorum vote in the event of cluster nodes losing connection with each other, so that only one of the nodes will be active, thus preventing a split brain scenario. Also, until the semi-annual release cadence of Windows Server 2016 is able to catch this update, you cannot do data in place growth from 2 nodes to 3 nodes. If you're going from 2 nodes to 3 nodes, the data needs to be removed, the node added, data restored, and then you're ready. Now, from 3 nodes up, data in place is fine with auto join and restripe of the mirror. And at 3 nodes is really where the highest fault tolerance occurs. A 3-way mirror also appears to be the most common implementation of data protection. You may have heard about Azure Stack, and Azure Stack uses Spaces Direct. Well, Azure Stack uses this build as well, to the point to where most of the configurations you'll see default to 3 nodes from a build perspective. Now, again, we use Microsoft's WSSD certified solution. And Dell EMC goes through the certification validation with WSSD, and we validate everything from the bare metal server all the way up storage, compute, up to the security layer, with or without System Center. So it's not a requirement to have System Center within this build, but the validation does have that. Now, there are options for customers to have things like shielded virtual machines from a 2016 perspective, or to leverage even further into a software-defined data center with software-defined networking. But those are not default options within the build. And what we have with the Ready node by default is that standard edition. So we do have a validation from a solution level point of view with Microsoft's WSSD certification. So Dell EMC Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct Ready nodes are pre-configured. They have certified components and validated building blocks that simplify ordering and reduce the deployment risk, going back to this WSSD program, while providing a superb customer support experience. The Dell EMC Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct Ready nodes are built on Dell EMC PowerEdge servers, which provide the storage density and the compute power to maximize the benefits of Storage Spaces Direct and the advanced feature sets of Windows Server 2016. And again, you will get a single point of contact for sales and technical support with this entire solution. So the 14th generation version of our Spaces Direct Ready node solution start at 2 nodes without any data in place expansion. Again, for customers wanting to expand, the starting point is going to be 3 nodes. Initially, it'll scale out to 4 nodes and then beyond. The default starting point in templates is going to be 3 nodes, and initial certification will be carried out for 2 nodes minimum and around a 4-node maximum. And then shortly after launch, post-launch, the hybrid configurations will be certified and validated up to 12 nodes, and hopefully beyond that pretty quickly, hopefully before end of year. We have SAS service device offerings that follow that of SATA. Those will be available post-launch as well. There will be a QLogic offering that'll stagger the Rocky-based Mellanox offering that's available at launch. It'll be available sometime post-launch, within a few days post-launch. That QLogic adapter will only be validated in iWarp mode as well, so the delta between Rocky and iWarp comes into play. The initial validation with Dell Networking is using the 10 gig S4048 top-of-rack switch. Shortly after announcement and launch of our 14th generation Spaces Direct Ready nodes, you will see 25 gig network cards that'll be uploaded to 25 gig switches. Today, those 25 gig network cards downlink to a 10 gig switch within the build that's validated today. So if we look at the offer details, we have the flexibility of Storage Spaces Direct within a configuration option. And there are templates that are available within your most favorite template ordering guides. Most of the deployments we see are likely to be brownfield, with customers already having some experience and history with Microsoft Hyper-V, with or without System Center. System Center is not required. Running System Center on top of this can be great, but again, it's not required. This is just an activation within the OS. So customers can do an OEM license at point of sale, or they can do volume licensing with either licensing through Dell EMC or a partner, or bring their own existing licenses within that deployment. And again, within the design criteria, within our deployment guides, we do provide instructions on integration within Microsoft System Center. Again, System Center is completely optional. And again, being a node, which is a step beyond just regular server, we still have all the delivery methods of how a customer wishes to implement this. The customer can completely do it yourself, and we provide the deployment guides to do that. But should a customer want help from deployment services, either with Dell EMC or Dell partners, that is available as well. The full implementation guidance is available. It's a step-by-step process out on Dell Tech Center. If you look up Spaces Direct deployment guides, you will see both the 13th generation and 14th generation deployment guides. And we do provide a solution level support. When the order is built, when the quote is configured before the order is built, there are warranty SKUs to track the Spaces Direct node sales, as well as adding components within that, so that you have pro support for software, which is a you cannot remove feature, which provides that multi-node cluster level support that's differentiated in market. And again, all of these templates, all of these offering details comply with that WSSD program under that standard certification. Now, being technical training here, you got to see a topology. So again, this is a hyper-converged build. We're using, in this example, the 14th generation of our program. We had the 13th generation R730XD. That's transitioning to the 14th generation R740XD as that hyper-converged building block. Compute and storage being hyper-converged around storage and network fabrics being converged. Again, at initial launch, it'll be rocky. A little bit after point of sale, we'll be doing some enablement with iWarp with those QLogic cards coming soon. Again, the template defaults to 3. I can dial it down to 2. I can dial it up to 4. And at some pretty quick time after launch and consult the ordering guide, you'll be able to expand beyond 4 nodes. We aspirationally think that'll be up to 12 nodes and eventually up to 16. Also within this configuration is something optional. There are 2 top-of-rack switches and an out-of-band switch, which are detailed within that template. Those are optional. The customer does not have to do Dell networking to have a supported ready node configuration for Spaces Direct. The customer can run off of existing infrastructure, which we understand can be very sticky. It can be Cisco or Arista or whatever type of networking they have. But we do provide what we use for the validation, which is a couple of top-of-rack switches, the S4048s, and again an out-of-band management switch with the S3048. And so if we look at the builds from an all-flash perspective, and again, this will be an after announcement opportunity. This is built off of the R640 1U hyperconverged building block. But again, everything we talked about a second ago regarding the 740 and 640 is the same. The ability for me to do Rocky will be available there immediately at launch. iWarp with the QLogic cards will be shortly after launch. The templates will be defaulted to 3 nodes. I can dial it down to 2. I can dial it up to 4. And it's going to be a period of time until we're able to expand beyond 4 nodes. So today it's 2 nodes to 4 nodes with the all-flash build running the 640. So since we're talking about topology, let's actually dive into the configurations. So one of the first and most common and most popular ideas around Spaces Direct is, if I'm looking at an R740XD, I want to throw a drive into every single place where I can put spinning disk or some type of SSD card. So the initial build that we use takes advantage of every single place where I can put a drive. So I have a 3x4 chassis at the front, 12 drives, all 3.5-inch drives. So I can put my cache drives, my SSDs on the front. I can also put up to 6 of my great big spinning disks that can be up to 8 terabytes. In the middle of the 740XD, I have a mid bay. And within that, I have 4 slots where I can put 3.5-inch drives. Again, typically that's going to be spinning disk up to 8 terabytes. And then at the very, very back of the server, I do have 2 3.5-inch drive rear bays. So again, doing the math here, adding our fingers and toes together, I have 18 drive slots. It's important to note within these builds that I'm going to have a caching tier and a capacity tier. My caching tier of 6 drives are going to be the ones in green that are at the front of the drive bay, and my 12 other drives, whether they're 4 terabytes or 8 terabyte spinning disk, take up the rest of the slots at the front, all the slots in the mid bay, and the slots at the back bay. I also have the value of having an iDRAC with the 14G product. We'll talk about more about that later. And I now, within the R740XD, have the advantage of having my OS boot drives sequestered away from where I normally would have to put drives. In the 13th generation version of our maxed out capacity configuration, if I wanted to mirror my OS, I would lose my 2 back rear bays to replicate my OS. Now, that's not the case. Now there is a PCI add-in card called a BOSS card, BOSS card. In that, I have a couple of 240 gig solid state drives in there that I can mirror with RAID 1 my OS, and we'll talk in more detail about that. So again, I have a huge amount of configuration options, up to 96 terabytes, reaching the theoretical capacity limits of what Spaces Direct allows within a single 2U R740XD chassis. And if we look at the actual design builds, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you will note that there is going to always be 6 cache drives and 12 raw capacity spinning disk drives. And recognize that the size of the cache, I need to have a ratio of at least 10%. I need to have at least enough cache to offset the amount of raw capacity that I have from a terabyte perspective within that spinning disk of my R740XD. So if I'm going with something as small as 4 terabyte spinning disk, I can support that with 960 gigabyte cache drives for solid state. But if I bump it up to 8 terabytes, the smallest I can get away with is 1.6 gigabytes on my cache tier. So again, I'm looking for that golden ratio of at least 10% cache as a percentage of capacity and up from there. And you will see that my usable capacity goes all the way up to 88 terabytes. The raw capacity that I have within my templates, 96 terabytes. Again, hitting the upper edges is what I can build. And again, being a Stored Spaces Direct ready node, we are looking to make this as ridiculously simple as we possibly can. If you're looking to build out the max capacity of this build and use all 18 of these drive bays, I really have 2 options. From a raw capacity perspective, I can support either 4 terabytes or I can support 8 terabyte spinning disk, which equates to 48 terabytes of raw storage or 96 terabytes of raw storage. So we have t-shirt based sizing based off of that storage capacity. I pick the amount of raw capacity, I pick my processor, gold, silver, platinum, whichever degree within the processor needs that I have. I pick my memory from 196 all the way up to 768 gigs. I pick my SSD, and again, I just reviewed that there may be quantity limits or size limits of what I can do for my SSDs for my cache size. I need at least that golden number of 10% cache. And the other thing is all these nodes must match. I can do 2, 3, 4 nodes, and shortly after release to sell, I'll be able to expand this much bigger and have a much larger cluster aware from the multi-node perspective of this. Okay, so we were talking about every single place where I could put some type of drive. I would want to take advantage of that with the capacity. But for some customers that are looking for a lower cost build and something that makes a little bit more sense of just taking advantage of the 12 drives of the front and maybe go a little bit smaller in my design configuration, I do have a hybrid balance configuration. So instead of using my mid bay and using back bay, I'm only going to use the 12 3.5-inch drives on the front of this unit. So again, everything else is similar regarding the options that I have within the R740XD. I have the option of doing a BOSS card as well, but one big call out. I do have the opportunity, instead of using 12 drives, I could get away with just doing 6 drives. Again, I need to make sure I maintain my cache perspective, but I can do something as small as 2 cache drives and 4 spinning disks. And the spinning disk can be 2, 4, or 8 terabyte in size, which allows me to go pretty small within each of these nodes. Again, at launch, it'll have the Mellanox card for Rocky. After release to sell, we'll have those 25 gig QLogic cards that'll allow me to take advantage of iWarp. And again, iDRAC and the other advantages that are available within our 14th generation platform. Again, there's a similar secret decoder ring on sizing. I am looking for at least 10% ratio of cache as a percentage of capacity. But I can start as small as a couple of 800 gigabyte cache drives and 4 2 terabyte drives, only taking up 6 of the 12 in the front bay, and I can get away with something as small as that, and it having 8 terabytes of raw capacity within that build, from 2 nodes to 4 nodes, and then expansion after RTS. Again, a little bit more complexity here because I have more drive options, from 8 to 16 up to 64 terabytes of raw storage using this 12 drive setup. It's the same idea. We're trying to keep it ridiculously simple. I pick the amount of storage that I want from a raw perspective within the build, starting at 8 all the way up to 64. I then pick my processor, silver, gold, platinum, my memory 196 to 768. The SSDs, again, I need to make sure I'm keeping at least 10% cache ratio versus my total capacity. And again, all these nodes must match. There is no mix and match capability here. I can't take a max capacity node and take one of these balanced nodes and put them together in the cluster. Spaces Direct doesn't like that. All these nodes must match. So let's pivot over and talk a little bit about network, because although it's not required, it is part of the validation that we did and something highly encouraged. You do have a couple of network options that are available within your template. So again, we use 2 of the S4048 top of rack switches. There's a lot of capability within that with 48 ports at 10 gigabit, and then I got some 40 gig uplinks. And then I'm using, from a out-of-band management perspective on that separate network, 3048 with 48 1 gig base T connections and some 10 gig uplinks. Again, a lot of the value that we have around Dell networking applies here. It is not a requirement, but this is exactly what we use for the WSSD design certification. It can be of great value to customers. And a quick example of the network integration example, the out-of-band connectivity from the 3048 is integrated with the Dell remote access controllers with the DRAC controllers, and then I can manage out-of-band management from my top of rack using those capabilities within Dell networking. A little bit more detail around the component integration. Again, at launch it will be using Rocky with the Mellanox ports connected within each server. You'll see the 2 switches within the Dell R740XD, 1 connected to each of the switches, and then down below for my out-of-band management I connect to that 3048. Again, networking is encouraged but optional, not a requirement for ready nodes. If the customer wants to run off of another networking topology or OEM, perfectly fine. That does not invalidate the ready nodes for Storage Spaces Direct. Okay, so once you actually get into the point of building out and getting into the templates, there's a couple of things that I want to reflect. Being a ready node, I can't just willy-nilly take anything I see from an R740 component perspective and just assume it's going to work. Again, there's a WSSD validation that happened both on the component and the solution level. So the templates will restrict the drives and will only show validated and certified drives. Again, there's a lot of options available for size and vendor for the cache drives. Make sure that you review the ordering guide and ensure the right quantities are picked on what we talked about just a minute ago regarding the ratios and numbers. You're looking for at least 10% cache to capacity. The ordering guide will help drive that guidance for you. The capacity drive counts, again, 18 drives can't be changed. For the balance, I do have some options, but for the capacity build, I got to fill up all 18 of those bays. There are entitlement SKUs that are required for tracking that are within the template. Whatever you do, don't take those off. That allows us to track and support this properly. You will also see some details regarding pro support for software. That is a do not remove for a storage spaces entitlement for support to have multi-node cluster aware support. Make sure that you keep those entitlement SKUs and those default SKUs in place. And then when you do have an opportunity, we're trying to make this very easy for you as well on how to forecast this. So if you do a product search, just simply search S2D. Hopefully very quickly you will see the product category for Microsoft S2D Ready Node, S2D being the Storage Spaces Direct abbreviation. And you'll be able to properly forecast your opportunity and align resources to help you qualify and close your deal. And finally, on a quick point, you also have to be aware software licensing. Software licensing for 2016 is a bit different from what you might have experienced going back to 2012. The OS licensing is now by core. And for each core, you have to have a license. And if you think about the number of processors and the number of cores within the build, you have to do some math. Well, there is an internal licensing calculator on the hyperlink that you see above, which makes this quite a bit easier for you. When a customer has data center license, it comes defaulted with 12 cores. So then you do the reverse math. In this scenario, I have 2 processors with 14 cores. I have 28 total cores that need to be licensed. Immediately out of the gate, I have a data center license, which takes 16 of those cores away. So I have 12 cores left in this example. So I need to get 6 more of the dual core licenses, which gets me up to 28 total cores. Again, it all depends on the number of cores that you have with the processor mix. It's something that you need to be aware of if you're doing OEM licensing, or at least provide the guidance over to the customer on how that licensing needs to occur. Now, services. Dell EMC services are there to help you, whether it's consulting services for small or big picture overview of the customer needs and the solutions designed to accomplish these goals, or if it's the PowerEdge goodness that we have around Pro Support, which provides unlimited access to 24/7 chat, email, phone support services that many of you are familiar with. In addition, we have Pro Support for software. It's important to call out that this is the industry first to market multi-node cluster aware support experience. This is beyond just OEM server support, single server support that many customers have been trying to get by with and many of our competitors are looking at. This is multi-node cluster aware support. Digesting these SAN-like features within the OS deserves a support experience of comparable quality. Pro Support for software as a part of our Ready Node for Spaces Direct provides that value. And again, while we provide all the deployment details to a customer, out on Dell Tech Center, we provide the deployment details for customers to do it themselves. We also provide deployment assistance when customers need that. Your customers can trust Dell EMC to deploy a rack configuration within the data center server, which includes network cabling and the operating system, firmware, and hypervisor with Dell EMC Pro Deploy. And also from a service perspective, we want to talk about Dell EMC Financial Services. Our financial services provides a full service leasing and financial solutions, and they're located throughout the world. These financial services can finance the entire technology solution. They can help move the conversation from traditional CapEx to an OpEx model, and there's a number of different options available for you. Contact your DFS rep for details on what's right for you and for your customer. So let's take a look at some typical use cases for Microsoft Store Spaces Direct. Our Ready Node for Spaces Direct is ideal for companies that wish to continue to use their known industry standard Microsoft Windows Server environments. They could be upgrading to Windows Server 2016, and they might want to take advantage of the improvements within 2016 to continue to leverage a Hyper-V environment moving from 2012 to 2016 with a number of ease-of-use migration resources. But they might also be looking to leverage not only traditional compute and memory that we've seen from a software-defined fashion with the typical virtualization ideas, but adding software-defined storage into that pool of abstracted resources. They can move forward in these virtualization strategies. And while System Center is not required, adding System Center along with Windows Azure Pack can be a strong IaaS solution for infrastructure as a service. And there's a number of upgraded or hosted virtualization applications such as Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft SharePoint. Both of those applications work very well in a virtualized platform, and Spaces Direct can be a wonderful target for those. Also, those looking for business continuity, whether they're using native Windows Server tools or if they're using Dell technologies like Avamar or Data Domain, or if they're backing up to the cloud with Azure Backup or Azure Site Recovery, business continuity needs is also a highly prevalent use case. And in some instances, Spaces Direct Ready Nodes can also be a good target for VDI use cases. And let's actually dive into that because there is a white paper available for that now. So support for VDI workloads on Spaces Direct is featured within 2 of our CCC reference architectures. The Dell EMC S2D Ready Nodes for Microsoft Remote Desktop Services, And also we're doing ready nodes for Citrix Zen Desktop. And both of these are posted out there for white paper review. We have RDSH for remote desktop session hosts. We have RDVH for remote desktop virtualization hosts with Microsoft RDS. And VDI desktops, which is as personal VMs using Citrix Zen Desktops. These ready nodes have launched for Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct with two hybrid media configurations, one designed for storage capacity and the other for when more compute capacity is desirable, such as to support VDI. A high-performance all-flash configuration featuring 2.5-inch drives and high-end processor options will shortly round out the initial set of offerings. And the features that we see within CCC is the ability to support Hyper-V compatible VDI brokers, which includes Microsoft RDS and Citrix Zen Desktop and Zen App. So on these new pre-configured 14G servers, specifically the R740XD, I can have the hybrid configuration, or I can do the 1U R640 all flash, available from 3 nodes up to eventually 16 nodes with the scalable version. If I need to dial it back to 2 nodes, I can. Again, I can't do data in place scalability there, but there's a number of deployment guides and services, and it's ideal for customers using Hyper-V based VDI solutions. And the benefits from a CCC perspective is it's reliable, easy to deploy HCI solution on Microsoft certified building blocks with a single point of contact. It's a convenient deployment and use case. You have a number of different choices of deployment and support for both pre-installed and bring your own licensing. So again, VDI is a wonderful use case in which we now have supported details. So let's pivot over to validation. So if I look at the detail regarding environment overviews around a 4-node hybrid validation test, we are starting to see some initial numbers coming out, and you'll see more of these over time, regarding some tested configurations on details we're going to be able to share out to customers. Now here's the first one. We took a 4-node cluster of the R740XD, running the max capacity, so 18 drives, and running the details that you'll see there on the hardware configuration, running Storage Spaces Direct with 20 VMs per node, with that VM configuration that's reviewed there on a 3-way mirror. And we used one virtual disk for VM Fleet to actually collect the data, and we used an 80-20 mix of read to write so that we were able to come out with some really interesting numbers from a CPU capacity memory perspective, and specifically around IOPS. At 95% utilization, we're touching just a little bit over 1 million IOPS. Over a period of time, you will start to see more and more white paper details regarding validation testing and configuration testing that'll make it more interesting for your customer to help make a decision of why Microsoft Storage Spaces Direct is right for them. Again, let's not forget that this is based off our new 14th generation design. So specifically within the 740 and 640, I now have capabilities within iDRAC around that lifecycle controller. Remember we talked about the out-of-band management. I can take advantage of the brains behind these automation features that's built into PowerEdge servers with this embedded processor that delivers agent-free control over the PowerEdge server using this integrated iDRAC device with iDRAC 9. That capability is available, as well as an optional BOSS card, a boot-optimized storage solution for software-defined storage. There's no need to compromise data storage. I don't have to remove 2 drives to mirror my OS. I can use this PCI-based SATA boot device, which mirrors my OS. I have 2 240 gig hardware RAID 1 devices that are mirrored off of each other, and that I can then remove my OS from having to be on these spinning disk drives and have it dedicated within a PCI-based slot. It frees up 2 drives that did not have the capability for 13G. Again, a very interesting technology to have the peace of mind of a mirror OS in the background. And also support assist for enterprise systems. We now have within our 14th generation platform an automated, proactive, and predictive support technology, which makes it far easier for customers to have a much better support experience. Even with the capabilities that we bring with Pro Support Plus, with Support Assist, we're able to rapidly speed up the amount of time to address the customer need and get a resolution in place. If we look at it without Pro Support Plus and without Pro Support Assist, you're spending quite a bit of time on the phone. With Pro Support Plus and with Pro Support Assist, we're able to provide one of the industry's leading solutions around how quick it is to address and resolve issues for customers. So if we take a step back and look at why Dell and why Dell EMC, the combination of Dell and EMC together brings these two industry-leading companies with strong reputations for value and innovation. Dell EMC holds leadership positions in some of the biggest and largest growth categories in the IT infrastructure business. And what that means is you can confidently source all your IT needs from one provider, Dell EMC. So if all of this sounded interested, how do I get started? Well, there's a number of contacts available for you. There's a number of regional leaders that can assist, but there's two call-outs I want to make sure that I address for you. Within InsideDell.com, if you search for S2DRN, that's S, the number 2, and the letters DRN for Stored Spaces Direct Ready Node, using that tag, there are a number of updated offerings and details. That's where you'll see updated ordering guides as more capabilities and more nodes come to market. Inside Dell.com, search for the S2DRN tag. And also, if you're looking for help in region around configuration support, or I need a traffic cop, or I don't know who's who, and for whatever reason you're unable to get resolution with the regional support members that are called out, there is a global support vanity email created just for you at the bottom of the screen. It's a global opportunity for you to address. Again, it's using that same abbreviation, S2D, then underscore ready node at Dell.com. Again, S, the number 2, and then D, underscore ready node at Dell.com. Feel free to hit that up and we'll get you in the right place to help you with any design characteristics that you need. And as the ready nodes continue to build out, whether it's vSAN, Scale.io, or Store Spaces Direct Ready Node, there are internal announcements, there's training such as this, there's sales guides, there's overviews, there's specialist contacts. The compendium will continue to be updated. You can hit that with that S2DRN note. So that's it. Thanks for your time and attention. Good luck and happy selling.